Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim, and this is another Real Ideal Gear Review. Today, we're going to be reviewing the Seiko SRPD85. I refer to it as the coffee watch. I don't know what else to call it. It is one of the most unique, it grows on you kind of a watch. My initial impression of this watch was repulsive. I did not like it, but the more I looked at some of the features and some of the details to this watch and the coordination that went into the design of this watch, the more I liked it. So let's get a quick look over the 5 things that I look at when it comes down to choosing a watch and see how this watch stacks up. So first, let's talk about size. The size of this watch is the typical size that you would see on a diver watch. It has the typical dimensions of a Seiko 5, 5KX, all of those together. I mean, it's kind of typical medium to larger size wrist. If you have a smaller wrist, petite wrist, whatever you want to call it, I would question whether or not this watch might be a little bit too wide or long. It's in that same category as most dive watches, but it's not a huge dive watch. So if you do have a small, medium, that smaller, medium-sized wrist, it's going to fit, I think, just fine. As far as the lug to lug, and this is something I'd like to hear from other people who have NATO straps. I have a couple of watches with NATO straps. I'm not a big fan of NATO straps as far as what they do to the overall length, the lug to lug length on a watch. It seems like it's longer, it feels longer, not to mention the keepers for the strap stick out from the side of your wrist on the outside part of your wrist, which is the part of your wrist that tends to snag on more things than the inside part of your wrist or the thumb side. So the NATO strap to me, as far as lug to lug length, I don't know about that. I think it adds a little more length to it and it becomes longer across the wrist. Another thing about this watch with the NATO strap is that it's tall. It stands tall on the wrist. So as far as my experience with this really is a watch that has caught itself on some things. Walking around, even my winter jacket, which has the elastic cuffs, it's a Carhartt jacket, but at the same time, no other watch really has a problem, with the sleeve going over the top of the watch. This one had a little more trouble with it. So some of those things as far as the snagability of the watch, I think is a high factor for this watch, especially when it's configured with a NATO strap. I think without a NATO strap, it becomes a normal dive watch configuration. I think it becomes better. So it is resolvable. This is not something that you look at it and say, well, I'm not going to get it because it's too high in the wrist. Take the NATO strap off, put on a 2-piece strap, and I think you'd be just fine, or a bracelet, either one. And it becomes the typical size diver. But the NATO strap adds, especially with the nylon, it adds significant height and I think length to the watch. So the overall size I think is great. The weight is just fine. It's a stainless steel watch, so you're going to have some weight to this. So keep that in mind. As far as fitment goes, I can fit this on my wrist pretty well. I wish this comes down to just the distance between the holes on the strap. I wish they would put them just a little bit closer. Maybe get one more hole in the same number of holes that you had, but just add one more and redistribute the distance equally among the rest. I think it would be very helpful to be able to more finely tune the fitment of the watch on your wrist, especially when it comes to a strap or a NATO strap. It has drilled lugs, so if you do want to change out your NATO strap to a 2-piece strap, bracelet, whatever it is, it's going to be really easy to do. I mean, the drilled lugs are exceptional for that. So that's a huge perk for the overall fitment. As far as the watch fitting on my wrist, it fits fine. It just fits tall and long. And it's one of those things that over time, I think it is going to be caught on a bunch of things. And as I get into the finish, you're going to find out I'm not all that thrilled about it being caught on things. So when I look at this watch for the finish, I thought for sure this would be a great work watch. It's dark colors. It doesn't have to worry about stains, those kind of things. But as I put it on my wrist and looked at it more closely, it's like, man, this has got some high polish. There's a plating on here. When you look at the case, what sold me on this was the plating on the case. The case plating is unbelievable. And the contrast between a regular stainless steel high polish case and this case with whatever plating they put on there really puts the package together when it comes to all the different colors that are in play. You have the darker strap, you have the darker bezel, you have a really dark dial, you have light colored indices, you have a high polished but plated case. All of these different shades of brown are wonderful when you put them together. I think the finish on this watch is outstanding. It is the surprise of this watch. I think those that have this watch and like the watch generally say the same thing. Those that don't have this watch and complain about it really haven't looked closely in my opinion, haven't looked as closely to the coordination of all these different colors as you put it together in a watch. As far as accuracy goes, it is within specs, but to me, being within specs on an NH35 or a 4R36 movement is just, it's weak. You know, in the day and age of all the engineering and manufacturing techniques that we have, that plus or minus 20 seconds, or I think maybe even higher than that, maybe 30 or 40 seconds, but whatever, being over 20 seconds off a day, that is just not good. I like to get mine down around 10 or less if I can, especially in a few of the positions, you know, the crown up or down, I like to get it within 10 on a few of those positions. And if I can do that, I think the watch has a good chance of being accurate for a week at a time. And I don't wear my watches months and months at a time. I wear them probably a week at a time, a couple weeks maybe, and then I swap them out. That's why you have a watch collection, right? So accuracy-wise, I think it's good. The other piece to this as far as accuracy goes, because has a high variability on the seconds per day, you're going to have to adjust the time. And, you know, every couple of months, you have to adjust the date. It has a date. So when I go and adjust the time or the date, the crown itself is really hard for me to get a hold of. So the practical grabbing of the crown, pulling it out, turning and making adjustments and all that, it's the pulling out. I just don't get a good grip or purchase on the crown when I want to make that adjustment. So the design of that, as far as being able to keep the watch accurate, is more difficult for me. Now, legibility and lume. Legibility is outstanding. Dark dial, the textured dial, it's a beautiful dial. The indices are white. The hands are white. I love the arrow hand on the minute hand. The second hand is green. If there's another piece to the finish that also adds to the legibility, it's the second hand being green. I don't know what it is, but it just stands out so well from the rest of the dial. And the hands themselves, the hour hand, minute hand stands out well. The indices stand out well. The 12, 9, and 6 are different from the rest of the indices. The 12 is different from the 9 and the 6. So as far as orienting orienting the watch at night or in low light conditions, it's easy to do because the indices do stand out. They are unique from each other, and the 12 is unique from all of them. So it hits the mark on all the legibility items that I have. It's easy to read when you take a glance at it when I'm working, and I've worn this watch a lot while I'm working to find out, because I was really curious about the height and the length of this watch. And so I've worn this watch a lot, but reading the time on this watch is an easy task to do. So let's go over the review, the overall, what are the big takes on this one? I think there's a number of dings on this watch. One of them being that there's no lume on the bezel. There's no pip at the 12 or the triangle, whatever you want, the 60-minute mark on the bezel. And that to me is something that really should have been done. Like, come on, put something on the dial that allows the dial to be useful in low light or no light conditions. The crown is just difficult to operate. It's too small. The crown guards get in the way. If the crown guards weren't there, leave the crown where it's at the 4 o'clock position, but take the crown guards off so that guys with bigger fingers like I have can get their fingers on that crown and adjust the time and adjust the date. Because this watch has kind of a dressy look to it, I think it's going to be more difficult for me to wear this watch in heavy work conditions. So far, I've been wearing it in kind of the lighter type duty jobs that I have. I haven't really worn this for that kind of work watch feel. And I do have digital watches for that, and that's what they're reserved for. Mechanical watches, I don't like to beat them up. I don't like the high impact stuff on a mechanical watch. I just think you don't have to do that. But I think because of the finish and the overall coordination of everything, I'm reluctant to take the NATO strap off. For crying out loud, I don't like it, but it's like it just fits so well with the rest of the watch. So when I find the 2-piece strap that goes with this, I'll probably swap it out. The case back is a display case back, but the outside rim or the bezel of the case back is not plated. I don't get it. You plated everything else, but you didn't plate that. You know, like, finish the job. I don't know about you, but that's just the way I look at it. Like, it maybe adds a little color to it, like different color or contrast or whatnot. But I just think if you're going to plate the case, you plate the bezel or the rim around the case back. This is a solid, easy to read watch. So on the plus size, it's really easy read. The NATO strap is awesome. The keepers on the NATO strap and the pin and buckle, they're all color coordinated with the watch. So the whole thing, this is what I'm saying, like the more I looked at it, the more I was like, this watch actually has all the pieces together when it comes down to the design. I love the design. Other things to consider, I think, as far as those of you that might wear a NATO strap type watch, different kind of watch altogether, but you wear a NATO strap. The thing I'm cautious about with NATO straps, especially nylon straps, is I don't mind them getting wet, but they do collect dirt and sweat, and so you do have to wash them out. So that's where the bracelet, I think, does a great job, or the rubber strap. It does a great job of just, being as clean as possible. You wash your hands, you wash the dirt off your wrist and things like that. It all kind of comes off together. But the NATO strap, that's nylon, you got some fine fibers that you're going to have to work with to make sure that you clean that out. Stuff collects on it. And if you don't take the time to just kind of wash it out and scrub it out just a little bit, it'll collect and build up over time. Overall score for this watch, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I wanted to give an 8.5 out of 10, but there's just too many things about the design of the watch. The lack of lume on the bezel, the crown size, the case back being a different color. It's sold with a NATO strap, and this is a resolvable thing, but the height and the length of the watch with a NATO strap, it just doesn't fit well. So 8 out of 10 is the score that I have. If you have any comments about this watch or a similar watch, or if you have this watch, I'd love to hear about it, because this watch is not all that common out there. So let me know what you think. This is another Real Ideal Gear review. My name is Tim, and I wish you all a great day.